Welcome to Page by Page, the podcast where we break down the most interesting stories from the world of business and finance. Today, we're diving into the August 2025 issue of Bloomberg Business Week. This issue is packed with stories that touch on the intersection of technology, politics, and global economics. It paints a picture of a world in flux, where established systems are being challenged by seismic political shifts and rapid technological disruption. We'll explore how one of the world's most famous CEOs is navigating a turbulent political landscape, dissect the escalating global trade war, and even look at how the job market is shifting for recent college graduates. So, grab your coffee and let's get started. Our first major story is a deep dive into the complex world of Elon Musk. The cover story, titled How Citizen Musk Threatens Elon Inc., explores the billionaire's tumultuous foray into politics under the second Trump administration. After being appointed to lead the new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, Musk's public antics and political statements have created a precarious situation for his business empire, including Tesla, SpaceX, and XAI. The article details a roller coaster of events, starting with Musk enjoying a close relationship with the administration, which he supported with over $300 million in campaign aid, and then spiraling into a very public and messy falling out with President Trump. This feud has had tangible consequences. For instance, Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, a new tax package, eliminated the $7,500 tax credit for most American-made electric vehicles, a move that directly impacts Tesla's bottom line. That same bill also removed penalties for automakers that don't meet federal emission standards, erasing a program that had provided Tesla with nearly $3 billion in revenue from selling regulatory credits in the previous year. The repercussions for SpaceX have been just as severe. The administration is now actively seeking alternatives to SpaceX for government contracts, after Musk, in a fit of anger, threatened to decommission the Dragon spacecraft, which is America's only vehicle for getting astronauts to the International Space Station. This has led the Pentagon to start calling competing rocket companies to check on their progress. The piece suggests that while Musk's companies have often thrived on his bold and sometimes erratic vision, his political maneuvering may be the biggest threat to his own empire. It's a fascinating look at the high-stakes game played when colossal business interests collide with political power, especially when that power is wielded by an equally unpredictable figure. Next, we turn to a major theme of this issue, the global trade war. A special section, Dispatches from the Trade War, examines how businesses of all sizes are coping with the Trump administration's aggressive tariff policies. Since returning to office, the president has made over 50 announcements regarding duties, creating a fog of uncertainty for companies trying to plan for the future. One compelling piece, Consider the Customs Broker, follows Jonathan Lieberman, whose job it is to navigate the labyrinth of new tariffs for his clients. What used to be a stable 9-to-5 has become a chaotic, in-demand profession where rules change almost daily. To cope with the stress, Lieberman even bought a magic 8-ball, which he shakes when clients ask for predictions. Its frequent answer, "Reply is hazy, try again," seems to sum up the current climate perfectly. For businesses like seafood importer Sensi Inc., the unpredictability of tariffs on goods from countries like China makes it nearly impossible to manage costs. As the company's co-president puts it, how do you operate a business and not know what your costs are? This uncertainty is causing many companies to rethink their entire supply chains. Another article in this section highlights how states in southern India, like Tamil Nadu, are positioning themselves as attractive manufacturing alternatives to China. They are rolling out the welcome mat with incentives and infrastructure development, hoping to lure companies looking to diversify away from tariff-hit regions. This shift is exemplified by the Japanese zipper giant Yakai, which has mastered the global supply chain over decades, and now faces unprecedented challenges. The company, which supplies roughly 40% of the global apparel industry, must navigate a world where a single product, like a car seat fastener, crosses the U.S.-Mexico border multiple times during production, incurring potential tariffs at each stage. Beyond the top headlines, this issue of Bloomberg Business Week also sheds light on several other important trends. For recent college graduates, the job market has become a tougher place. An article titled, "College Grads Are Struggling to Get Their First Jobs," explains that the unemployment rate for this group is 5.8%, more than double the rate for all degree holders. The tech sector, once a guaranteed path to a good job, has seen a particular downturn, with computer science and engineering graduates facing unemployment rates of 7% or higher. In the world of health and wellness, we see a fascinating story on the rise of the direct-to-consumer male fertility market. Companies like Legacy are offering at-home sperm freezing kits, using special chemical preservatives that keep samples viable during overnight shipping, making the process more accessible and affordable. This comes at a time when global sperm counts are believed to have dropped significantly, making fertility a growing concern for many men. The magazine also tackles the chaotic market for GLP-1 weight loss drugs. It chronicles the journey of telehealth company Hims & Hers as it navigates the regulatory landscape to sell compounded and therefore cheaper versions of popular drugs like Wegovy. The story is a wild ride of regulatory loopholes, a Super Bowl ad that drew the ire of the pharmaceutical lobby, and a very public spat with drug giant Novo Nordisk after a short-lived partnership fell apart. The company's CEO, Andrew Dudum, is trying to position his company as a healthcare disruptor, even as it operates in a regulatory gray area. So, what's the big picture from this issue of Bloomberg Businessweek? It's a world in flux. We see established systems, from global trade to corporate governance, being challenged by political shifts and technological disruption. The stories of Elon Musk, the customs brokers, and the graduates searching for their first job all point to a landscape where predictability is a luxury. But it's not all chaos. We also see innovation and adaptation. Companies are finding new ways to reach consumers, whether it's through at-home health kits or by shifting entire manufacturing hubs to new countries. It's a reminder that in the world of business, change is the only constant. With that, I hope that you feel a bit more informed about the state of the financial and business landscape from our dive into this month's issue of Bloomberg Magazine. My co-host will now provide some commentary, taking the ideas from the magazine and giving a bit of a dive into their own opinions.
The discussions we've had on these stories from the August 2025 issue of Bloomberg Businessweek have been buzzing. Following the summary, we're going to respond to that conversation by presenting a consensus, middle-of-the-road perspective on the key issues. We're going to try and find the common ground in the debates about Elon Musk, the trade war, and the shifting job market. The story about Elon Musk and his political maneuvering has certainly stirred the pot. Many of you see him as a reckless provocateur whose ego is jeopardizing his business, while others defend his right to use his platform for political expression. A more balanced perspective suggests that both sides have a point. It's undeniable that Musk's public political persona has created significant headwinds for his companies. The loss of the EV tax credit and the administration actively seeking alternatives to SpaceX for government contracts are concrete examples of this. His threat to decommission the Dragon spacecraft, America's only way to send astronauts to the ISS, was a particularly shocking move that damaged his relationship with the government. However, it's also true that his bold, high-profile, and sometimes chaotic approach has always been a key part of his brand. This is the Musk mystique that has fueled his success. His ability to capture public attention and rally support has been instrumental in the success of ventures like SpaceX and Tesla. So, the middle-of-the-road view acknowledges that while his political actions are a real and present threat to his company's stability, they are also a fundamental part of what built his empire. The challenge and the risk is finding the balance between using that power for political influence without it becoming a self-inflicted wound, a balance he seems to be struggling to find. The dispatches from the trade war section also generated a lot of discussion. We heard from people who believe these tariffs are a necessary tool to protect domestic industries, and from others who argue they're an unmitigated disaster for businesses and consumers. The consensus view is that the reality is far more complex than either extreme. The tariffs are indeed creating chaos and unpredictability for businesses like seafood importer CNC Inc. and the zipper maker YKK, making long-term planning incredibly difficult. We also saw how small businesses from the show Shark Tank are struggling, with founders saying the sudden policy shifts leave them screwed. we can't deny the immediate negative impacts on supply chains and the increased costs that are likely passed on to consumers. However, we also can't ignore the fact that these policies are prompting a much-needed reevaluation of global supply chain dependencies. The article about states in southern India positioning themselves as manufacturing alternatives to China highlights this long-term shift. Companies like Delta Electronics are moving production there, attracted by incentives and lower wages, in a trend that might, in the end, create more resilient and diversified global trade networks in the future. The middle ground here is to see the trade war not as an inherently good or bad thing, but as a disruptive force that is causing short-term pain, especially for smaller players, while potentially laying the groundwork for a more geographically diverse and less concentrated global economy in the future. The question isn't whether the tariffs are right or wrong, but how businesses and governments will adapt to this new, more complex reality. Finally, the stories on jobs, health, and tech also struck a chord. The bleak outlook for recent college graduates with unemployment over 5.8% was a tough pill to swallow, while the innovation in the fertility and health markets was a source of optimism. A balanced view on these topics recognizes that both trends are happening simultaneously. Yes, the job market is incredibly tough for new graduates, particularly in sectors like tech that were once considered sure bets. This is a real problem that requires systemic solutions, from educational reforms to new approaches to job training. But at the same time, we're seeing incredible, almost Wild West-style innovation in other areas. The rise of direct-to-consumer health companies like Legacy and Hims & Hers shows that technology and entrepreneurship are still creating new markets and solving real-world problems, often by operating in regulatory gray areas. Hims & Hers selling compounded weight loss drugs is a prime example of a company pushing boundaries to offer cheaper alternatives, even if it leads to public battles with pharmaceutical giants. The middle-of-the-road perspective is that this is not a story of doom or unbridled progress, but a story of uneven change. Some sectors are contracting and struggling, while others are expanding and flourishing, often in disruptive and controversial ways. The key for individuals and businesses is to understand these divergent trends and to position themselves to be on the right side of the disruption. It's a landscape of both challenge and opportunity, a world in flux, where success depends on a clear-eyed understanding of both the headwinds and the tailwinds. That's our take on the consensus view from the Bloomberg Businessweek issue. It's a reminder that complex problems rarely have simple answers, and that the truth often lies somewhere in the middle. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next time with another deep dive. We encourage you all to like and subscribe and leave your thoughts down below.